It's always good to have new eyes in the morning. I was playing around with my woodpecker here, noticing that, a few little tweaks that I have to make to the pattern for you guys. It's all same techniques, guys. It's just a little bit of shaping going on, and I hope to capture that in the pattern for you guys. His nose, I had to make a little tiny bit longer. And also his feathers here were a little bit off, and the shape of his neck I didn't bring down long enough. Whenever you have any adjustments that you have to make, right, if you feel like you did too much, belly's too big, whatever, you want to bring in more background back, all you have to do is just kind of white it out, get that shape back in. And that's why I always tell you not to be so gloopy, because you always see that dry edge under something when you go to move it, right? So even his eye, I moved his eye too, because it was too far set back and it's a little bit closer. So once I started looking again, I just made a couple adjustments on his face from what you guys saw earlier. All right, so if there's any area like his eye was ridged, I just took a little bit of a corner of a nail file and smoothed that down. So now you don't see that black ridge that I made. And then I moved it up a little bit closer. All right, so I'm just gonna, play with this to get rid of the blue. Right, and then I pushed his belly here a little bit more, and I brought it out a little bit more here too. Right, so just sometimes you have to play around and look at it. When you're trying to do it freehand, guys, I'm not copying a pattern. I really am pushing my drawing skills and also pushing myself not to have to draw it all perfectly, but now to make these adjustments through paint. Okay, so a lot of times we get caught up on trying to copy, and I'm really trying to push my drawing skills a little bit more in where I'm using the brush. Okay, so I didn't like where his red was, so I ended up putting a little bit more white back on there. Let that dry. Right, the brighter you get this white, the brighter your red's gonna be. Okay, so sometimes you have to go back and put 2 coats, right? And then remember, I was messing around with this area, said that I had to come back to it, but I didn't want to spend the time on the camera with you guys messing around with my pattern. So I hope you like them better now. All right, just blow dry this tiny little bit. And then I can always come back in here with a little bit of Pueblo to fix this shape here. Right, come in behind it. Right, any little spots, right? You can always just in case you guys have a problem, right? Just to let you know that it is easy to kind of adjust, make a little bit more adjustments. That weight is on the tree part I have to fix. Right, so now I'm just using a number 2 flat, and then flip flop, a few yellow in there, grab a little bit of red, right, and then it'll just soften and merge back over, and you would never know. Okay, so I just wanted to show you a little bit of a quick fix with you guys if you feel like you need any little bit of adjustments, right? So we were going to come back here anyways and play and add a little bit more shading around our tree and intensify our tree still a little bit. So, you know, this is a good time to kind of, you know, really look at your painting, see if there's any kind of areas that you are not happy with. All right, just put a little bit of brown in with that red, just to kind of adjust maybe some shading that I did earlier or from the tree or whatever. Right, so even bits of green, right? The leaves aren't all gonna be turning at the same time. There still might be some remnants of some green leaves in there that are a little bit more dirty, right? Dirty brown, green kind of colors in there, right? So you can always add bits of, you know, darker patchy areas here, especially around the tree behind it, right? So we're going to add more to that as well. All right, play around and have fun with it, guys. I hope that you'll, you know, like the little extra little details, trying to make it easy, but then also showing you guys how easy it is to bump it up to another level, right? So this guy is all nice and dry now. So I can come back in and add my red back in there. Alright, so now he looks a little bit longer in the face. And then I'll let this dry and then come back and line it with some black, and we'll play around with this a little bit later. I just kind of went, I have to make this adjustment. I keep looking at him and he's not right. And the guys, you know, I kind of got a little bit carried away too, and I'm sure you might as well. So any areas that maybe you wanted a little bit bigger, right? So I'm not making new areas, and just see how dirty, drabby some of these little holes are that are like your little peekaboos that we tried to fix earlier. I'm just gonna take this time here while I've got, you know, adjustments that I want to make, to really look at areas that, you know, I don't like, doesn't look right. Just cleaning off a little area there, merging it in, and we're definitely going to add more to our tree here too. I was looking at some trees, and you know, I've done this typical kind of movement quite a bit in a couple of my projects now, and I just thought of a great idea to play around and add a little bit more texture with it, since we've been playing around with our thicker, super thick paints. You know, you can always add more if you like, right? So I don't want this to be too dark here because this one's pretty dark. So we have to kind of lighten this one back up again, right? To kind of sit in front. So like I said, I'm just using my little two, and I'm just kind of tweaking areas. So this is what you're gonna do at the end too. Right, so you put the dark brown behind, and then whatever you're doing is going to definitely look lighter, right? Playing around with both those spectrums. Okay, so down here, I don't have any coffee latte right now. We'll have to come back to this as well. But I'm definitely a little happier with his neck. Like, it was just like he looked like he was a boxer or a football player or something, the way his shoulders and neck was so big and his head was so small. So yeah, I'm definitely happier with that now, guys. Alright, so you can compare the pictures and the step outs of how I changed this. Alright, and then maybe that'll give you an idea too to look at yours and see, yeah, maybe the same thing happened because you were copying me. But follow the pattern. I can't stress that as much. Wait to this point to pop them on there too if you want. Like, get the background all done. Use a white transfer paper so that you don't lose your pattern. Okay, so yeah, that's just my original painting. Pros and cons. I did my certifying elite was a assignment from Dawn of Dewberry that was doing the same painting 3 times, and it was amazing too because I really learned a lot about each painting. Why did I like some better than others, and what technique did I do slightly different? And so yeah, definitely, guys, don't be afraid to do things twice. I always suggest to do it a mock on some canvas paper, something. Cardstock is a little bit dry. You're gonna have a hard time, but it might be okay. At least it's something. But definitely there is some nice canvas papers out there that act a little bit more like a canvas. And once you get that background done, it just absorbs the water and the paint better. It doesn't warp so much the paper. All right. So that's what I would suggest is to, go ahead and play around on something like that. Practice all the techniques. Make sure you're happy with them. Then go and repeat it on the canvas. Definitely these cardstocks can be great to practice. You could easily just put the pattern of the bird on some paper and play around and just practice him by himself. Then come and put him on the canvas. Alright, because a lot of this background is pretty easy to do. So you can easily just kind of practice him a little bit by himself. And then put them anywhere, right? Higher or lower, it won't really matter. And then we're just gonna put some feet on him. All right, so which I can kind of do lightly, but I was wanting to make sure that I was happy with my tree first before I committed to the shape of his feet. All right, so they kind of come up a little bit on top of the tree here. And I'm going to use a little bit of white and brown just so you can see it. All right, so we've got his bottom toes down here, and he's got 2 feet, so you're kind of seeing, both. You're seeing the one back here, and then you're going to see another one on front that's going to be a little bit brighter. Okay, so I'm just kind of saving spot for his feet, and then knowing that. Okay, so his feet come down and around in the front, kind of joining into his body kind of look. Google some woodpeckers, guys, and I'm sure you're gonna see what I'm seeing. Alright, because I am inspired by the real bird in this painting. Okay, so under inspection, I was playing around with the black a little bit too much. Definitely there's some areas that I'm tweaking, guys. I hope you appreciate the process, and just know that, again, you have the pattern. Okay, so this little white spot I put in here, I shouldn't have. Right, I didn't really like what I was doing earlier, so I was playing around with my browns and okay, so there's this one is a point this way. And then there's another one pointing this way. And then it rides underneath too. There's some color here too, a little bit, right? So we've got the white in there now. And now I'm just touching a little bit of burnt umber. To add a little bit of depth in here. While it's wet, pick up a little bit of white. Right, so it's a little bit dirty there, dirty white, dirty brown. And we can always put a little bit of brown in there to touch up the shape here. And I'll come up and I'll line around that a little bit more. So a little bit of shadow under here, but it's got to be a different color, almost. A little bit of gray, black, white, brown, right? So then we can get some depth under there. Okay, so just a little bit of that. It's got one. So there's 2 feet over here, right? So there's another bit of a claw there. A little brighter. And we'll add some more details to that. So it's like a browny kind of gray. Just going in and dirtying my white just a little bit. Pick up some fresh white. Okay, and then my little blue area there is just way too close to it. So definitely there's some more tweaking of the background I want to do quickly with you guys. Okay, so I want to come in again with a little bit of red and a little bit of Pueblo to kind of play around here and darken behind his claw. And then sputter a little bit more yellow around it. Okay, so let's see how that stands out a little bit better now. And same thing with, you know, this area here, maybe around the tree. Right, so ever so lightly, guys, we're just kind of enhancing what we did here. And again, little touch-ups, right? Just, you know, any areas that you're not happy with, you woke up the next day and you just feel like there's just not enough little freckles and stuff like that around things. Again, a little bit more lighter around the blue, right? Might help to kind of highlight that a little bit more too. All right, so just little tweaks here and there to brighten things up. You know, again, maybe you were a little bit muddy in some areas, right? So I plopped some white down and then I realized there's a branch there. And I'm like, oh, no, I can't have peaks of sun going on there. So again, where I just kind of plopped, I want to soften around the edges a little bit. Just lightly, kind of softly sputter a little more. Okay, working my way down, let up my wet paint. And I like the darker blue there, so I don't want to mess with that. And here's like a shadow, right? So you don't need to lighten this area up a little bit more. But we definitely want to come over here and like maybe there's some leaves falling, right? So we're just going to trickle a little bit brighter. A little bit more yellow. Trying to stay on the wet areas here. And not covering more areas, just kind of highlighting those little dabbies that you made. A couple off the side, working around a wrap canvas, you know, you definitely want to kind of play around with a little bit lighter here. Right. Making them maybe look like, you know, little clusters of lighter colors. Right. So these are like, it's a windy day and things are moving. Right, slowly building up down here. Right, so down here's gotta be really tiny little dabs, guys. Really dabby. And if you want to add just the smallest amount of white into your yellow, okay, so just some little highlights here at the top. And we're gonna definitely keep finishing our bird's tail. Okay, so you see how that's just kind of popping things out a little bit more. A brighter, a little brighter yellow as we work down. Okay. And then as we get down in this area, then they're gonna be definitely a little bit thicker, pushing down on your brush. Okay. So we definitely want to add some more illusions of bigger leaves here. And play with our tree a bit more. Right back here, you're not really seeing any definition of any kind of leaf. But now as we come around the corner here And then onto here, this is where our leaves got to get bigger. Alright, and then I'm starting to get sun on my table now, so I have to take a little bit of a break because it really gets bright. You'd be really seeing real sunshine on my painting here. So I'm going to let this all sit here for a little while. I played around with it this morning, and then I'll come back later to finish off the rest of the details. So let's get our big 3/4 brush out again and play around with our tree trunks. I guess we'll get some fresh burnt umber out if you have it, and also some cobalt a little bit to darken some areas. And if you have asphaltum, it's a nice brown. Definitely you can pull that out for this as well. But I always like making my own colors. I just have fun with it. And a little bit of Pueblo. And a little bit of coffee latte. Okay, because with all the sun reflections and stuff like that, there's some little warmer areas on there, and there's actually a little bit of moss growing down there as well, so we'll get a little bit of thicket, and lime green we'll use a little bit. A little bit of thicket. Okay, so my brush was dampened with a little bit of water, and if you need a little bit more movement, you can definitely use a little bit of medium, but on top of already paint, it's usually pretty good. All right, so we want a little bit of coffee latte and burnt umber for now. And we're just gonna go along and see how I got a little bit of maybe some of the leaves that we did. Definitely, we're going to put some on there anyways, but maybe that's not in the spot you want. So I'm just kind of going over my edges here a little bit. And remember guys, trees are not even, like they're not a straight line. So, you know, we can definitely pull this out a little bit and make it a little bit jaggedy in spots. And, you know, definitely it's got its own way about it, you know, it's not really there. And in fact, like some of the pictures that I've been looking at, like, you know, there's maybe a couple little sticks and stems sticking out too. So this is where I like to put a little bit of cobalt in my browns, just so that I can, you know, get some maybe twiggy looks coming out and just weirdness coming on in spots. Okay, so just every once in a while I go and pick up a little bit of cobalt. So I'm just sticking around the outside here area first, wetting that up good. All right, and then see how I'm just a little bit off there. That's okay, just keep going. And we'll make this pop out now. Okay, a little tiny bit of blue. And all right, so I want to add it to, oops, just a couple spots. Go back and pick up a little bit more brown. You know, some of these are cut off. And even if it has that little bit of blue tinge to it, it's fun too, right? Against that orange. Right, so maybe there's some that's gonna go down. Not too many, guys, just a couple, just for the look of it. And then what I want you guys to do too, add some stronger streaks, maybe a little tiny bit of white, in the coffee latte. Right, so there's a lot of really strong curves and creases going on in this wood, and there's lots of bugs for this woodpecker to kind of find home, right? So I want to put a little bit of white in there, just streaking it here and there. Get a little closer for you guys. Maybe you can see here, down here. Right, so down here, there's little knots in the wood, right? So definitely putting a little bit of cobalt on those too, right? They make them a little bit darker. And we need the light to be right underneath it so you can see the layers of it, right? So just kind of plopping in a little tiny bit of, just a little bit of white in the coffee latte. And just using the back of my brush, guys, to kind of put that dark in there. Now I'm coming over and grabbing my coffee latte, or my brown's really good. Again, just a smidgen of blue, right? Just to darken it. Right? And almost just like we're doing our rose, right? So now we want to maybe make a little dot in there, and then come down to close it. Right, I got a little bit more blue in there, now so a little bit more brown. Right, so this is just kind of creating like a little knot here that he's going to come and visit. Right, so again, I'm just adding a little bit more streaks looking in there around it. Right, because maybe there's, you know, the evidence of those knots, right? So it's slowly peeking itself out around that knot, right? So a tiny little bit of white, especially as we're working in the middle parts of it. So just enough to lighten your coffee latte up just a little tiny bit, right? Got some nice lighter areas, right? And then as it's starting to curve and turn around, sometimes they have, you know, a little bit more twisty marks to them. Right, so I'm going to just slowly turn the curve into straighter lines. Okay, so just coffee latte and white for now. Right, a couple little areas that are proceeding a little bit lighter. Just trying to drag my back of my brush a little bit to pick up some of those lighter colors. Right, so I'm pulling down, I'm dragging down with the dark, right, and then I'm going up, trying to drag a little bit of that lighter color. Right, a little bit more coffee latte. So as you're getting closer to the edge, try not to put too much white in there. Okay, so I'm just trying to swoop around and you know, curl these into each other here a little bit. Right, so this is lighter coming in here. Right, so add some little bit of circles in there. Really light curl. So it looks like they're kind of joining together. Right, so down here is forming a bit of a V. Right, oops, a little bit too much blue. Add a little bit more coffee latte, lighten it up. Add just a smidgen of white when you need it to, you know, just to lighten up that area. Okay, so a little bit more depth into some of our roots here. Okay, so it twists around, so this one looks like it's knotted over. I'm just gonna add just a little bit of white. Oh, just the perfect amount, just a very light feather touch I'm touching, guys. All right, so definitely want some dark in there too. Okay. And then also over on this side's a little bit neater, right? But maybe this side has got some jaggedy spots on it as well, right? So just kind of potentials of, you know, some of the knots that they have. Okay, fix up underneath the bird here a little bit. And then I'm going to come up and add more here too. So I do want to keep this a little bit light on this side here, so then you can darken this tree behind it. All right, so I want to add a little bit more streaks here, a little bit more white. All right, so just here and there, and then dirty it down with your dark. All right, a little bit too white. Okay, in some areas, oops, no, that's way too heavy-handed. Oops, you guys can't see. Okay, so wipe it out helps too if you've got too much paint that came down. Oop. Try to pick up more dark. And then try to, so it goes right off the canvas. And then it might have a little curve in the road here, right? So there's this little area of the other branch, right? So you might have a little bit of a curl around it. And darken this just a little bit with the blue. And then be very careful, these are small, right? So again, I just try to add some warmth in there with the coffee latte. And then add some more blue just on the edge here. Right. And then add maybe some of those irregular spots here. Okay, so maybe there's another little knot over here somewhere too. Again, you want to put it in a good spot, even off the side of the, no, not right there. Yeah, no, I'll put it right here, right? Because you can turn around and pick up another little knot of color. Okay, so again, lighten that up in there. If you don't have your gradient high enough. Another little one. Just depends on how big you want to make these knots, and definitely want to try and make them a little bit proportioned to the log. Right, so this could have been a broken branch, right, that's coming in this direction. And then pull a few more streaks around it. You can always do another little row under it. I've got to put the blue in there. I like to put a little bit of time. If I'm not sure, you know, I don't want it to go too heavy, you know, then I definitely will inch it along. Like I don't want to put too much medium in my brush. I'd rather have some coverage. Okay, and then behind the bird, you can put a little bit more shading here. All right, so I'm looking a little bit more tree-like now. Just a little bit more depth. Try to put those streaks so they go right off. Okay, so I'm just wiping off the excess, and I'm picking up just the smallest amount of Pueblo here, and I want to just try to kind of just hit it in spots with that little brightness. All right, try to stay away from the blue areas too much. All right, adding just that little gold tint to it a little bit in spots. And you're almost dry brushing it on, guys. It's just a very light, wishy-washy coat. You could wait until this is all really, oops, not pick up any green. Could wait till this is really dry. I'm gonna put green on, but not there. But, you know, that's okay. The moss is growing there. Okay, so that was pretty dry, pretty quick. See how light of a coat that is? And picking up just a little bit of Pueblo, hit it and just glowy areas. So just enough to say maybe just a little bit here and there. Maybe there's a little glow happening over here. Right? Glow off of all these yellow, orange, red, all these different colors of. Right, so I've got a really wet brush, and I just enough to say that I'm hitting a little tiny bit of a glow on that wood. Okay, so I do want to pick up a little bit of brown again, a little bit of blue, and make sure that this tree here looks darker. Right, so I'm just adding a little bit more shading. Definitely might need a little bit of medium to let that blend in a little bit more. Just put a little tiny bit. It's like a wash, so you should still see a lot of that texture in there. And you can definitely put just a very mild one if you don't have it. Okay, so this is looking pretty good down here. Okay, see that little tiny bit of blue? It does show with the brown, but it's a very muted type of brown blue. Right, it just complements all the orange in the painting. Right, a little bit more shading on top here, like just in spots it might need. Right, a little bit of medium, a little bit of burnt umber. I hardly have any coffee latte left on my brush here. It's just mostly medium. Okay, so just adding that little bit of depth back here to make this look a little bit further away. And just down the sides here a little tiny bit. And just kind of floating that depth in there a bit. Okay, a little bit of brown, a little bit of blue. And then dip into your floating medium. Just a little bit of depth along that light line. Coming up in the corner here. Right, you should hardly see it, but you do see it. Right, just enough to say that you're shadowing it a bit. Right, lay your brush flat. Right. And definitely you could add more to it if you want, like more texture. Like depends on what kind of wood that you're trying to mimic. So I want to pick up my little 3/4 scruffy brush. Right, and hopefully it's one that you've used quite a bit and it's really worn in. I find the older they are, the better they get. The one from the signature set is a little bit different and a little bit softer. Different types of material. This is more plasticky, right? Sometimes they're very blunt on the end. So I definitely want something that you're able to freckle. Okay, so we're going to add some moss down here. Okay, so I want to pick up a little bit of I want to I want to pick up a little bit of thicket, and I'm going to put it in a clean spot so you guys can see a little bit better. And then on the other side, I'm picking up lime green, and try to make sure that you're staying out of the dark too much, but you do want it to be about half and half, right? So a little bit more than of the lime, so then that way you don't get too dark. Okay, so we'll start by back tapping a little bit with that thicket in there first, right? That's always usually the safest way to do it. It's a small brush so you can see that I'm already starting to pick up that little bit of lime green in there. Okay, so just keep picking up just a little bit more dark. And then I'm trickling just a little tiny bit of that moss up around the tree a bit. And then it's growing all in the crook here a little bit, all the moisture that's collecting from the rain. It kind of sits in that little hollow a little bit more, right? And then whatever side of the tree that usually gets no sun, you know, a lot of times this will grow as well, right? So we're just kind of adding little bits of moss, leave some space a little bit so you can see some wood in between it, right? So you want some little mounds, and then you want some space, right? So if you get too light, just go over, pick up a little bit more that, and then tip right over on your tip with some darker or lighter color. Really, I'm always playing with my scruffy brush in both directions. Right, so when I want to enforce the light, or if I want to add a bunch of dark, then I can tip over and freckle a little bit more. Right, so I'm just kind of bringing this down here a little bit more, again, all dark. Go pick up some fresh lime, come over and just lightly freckle it, very lightly. And just on the tip of your brush, and don't overwork it, right? You're just very light and picking up thick paint. Right, and this all has a bit of a greeny kind of mossiness around it. Right, some have a little bit more visible than others. Right, the kind of grew in that little crook in there is what I was trying to imagine. Right, and some of it's not as bright as others, right? You don't have to make it all really bright, right? Some of it's nice just with that little bit of dirty lime green you got going on, but you definitely want a little bit of the depth behind it, right? With the dark. Leave a little bit of space. Maybe it's growing up the side of this guy a little bit more. Right, so this is going to add a little bit of, this stuff doesn't really change in the winter, you know, like, or in the fall and change colors. It kind of stays a little bit of green all the time. Right, so depending on where you're from, you might have a little trickle. All right, so I have a couple of really good heavy areas, and now I'm just kind of just adding a very light illusion of it. I don't want to overpower down here with a lot of heavy pouncing. I just wanted to enhance this look a little bit. So you see some of them are a little bit blurred, some of them are a little bit brighter, right? And then of course you do still want to keep it looking a little bit browny, you know, but maybe just with a little hint of green. Right, so again, I'm just kind of scruffying my dry brush right here and there, just kind of marrying this area a little bit together, and staying away from your Pueblo area, you know. Oops, you want to make sure you're not touching any area that you pounced. Right, so we'll get a little bit of dark back in there again, and then freckle a little bit more here. Okay, so I think, does that kind of do some interesting looks there for you? Like, you can always play around with tintable mediums, guys. This stuff is so much fun. Like, you don't really need all the colors that are available. If you just wanted to buy the super thick tintable medium all by itself, I'm telling you, it's going to be wonderful to play around with any of your multi-surface paints. So if you wanted to add just that little tiny bit more thicker look for this moss, okay, so you don't have to really put it in both colors. You can definitely just put, I don't even want to use all of this because maybe I'm going to put some over here in the brown. Just a little tiny bit at a time to see what it's going to do, if you think you'll like it or not. If you don't have this, then you don't need to put it in there. Maybe I do need that a bit more. Then you don't, it's still going to look nice with the texture that the paint gives it. Right, so that's what I was trying to say. Make sure you're picking up really good thick paint so that you're leaving a little texture behind, like, you're getting a little bit with the leaves here. So I'm going to pick up just the thicket by itself and then come over and pick up some of this thick paint, and just in a couple spots I'm just going to come over and highlight some of those areas that are already highlighted, or maybe a little bit more blurred, and I can come over and really add some texture on here so it really looks like this moss is kind of raised. Very light touches. Oh yeah, that's kind of cool stuff. I'm just addicted to it now. I played around with a sunflower, and if you guys want to try something oversized, definitely. So I'm just kind of scraping it up so I can pick it up, because I've already got the look going on here, right? So this is definitely something that you want to add last, right? Get your look looking good, and then just come over and hopefully you can see this little blurred area. I'm trying to just hit the top of it. And you can erase something if you don't like it, right? This little heavy area. You can just take it out, lighten it up a bit, and then try to touch it a little lighter. And so I just made just the tiniest amount, and that was just more than enough that I need for just a little bit of a raised look. Right. Yeah, so try not to touch it because it will smear, and then you'll end up maybe smudging a look. You'll have to erase that, right? Get rid of all that wet paint. Okay, so I want to play around a little bit more with my tree trunks with this too. And this is something definitely I'm playing around with now, but you should finish the bird first and then go ahead and do all this texture work that might take a little longer to dry. Okay, so I want to pick up just a little bit more of this and put your lid on, guys. Okay. And then, like I said, there was some areas that just a little bit of color, right? So about half and half at least. I think it says 2 to 1. But we are playing around with multi-surface paint here too that has sealer in it as well. So if you were playing with regular paint that didn't have the sealer in it, then maybe, you'd want to have more medium than paint. But, you can make different degrees of this, right? So you definitely want to make a nice thick paint. And then hopefully you have another scruffy brush around that you can pick up some thicker paint, and then I'm going to sneak in just a bit of cobalt. Just so I can make some a little bit more cooler color. Right. And then right on the edges, guys, you got to kind of tip right over. Right, keep picking up just little bits at a time. Just try a couple spots if you like it. Right, because a lot of wood has a lot of texture to it, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm just picking up maybe some of the darker areas, right? Using this as a extra shading option. So yeah, I really like that. So definitely on both sides, you can come around the edges a bit. Right, just adding a little bit more textured look. So like I said, if your painting is all dry and you don't like what's going on, then you just kind of erase it. And I know I might need a good amount of this because I want to do quite a bit of my wood. And then what I want to do too is save some of this and put it in with some Pueblo and maybe go over some of my leaves a little bit more. Alright, so we gotta mix this. Bring some of that brown over here. And I love that it doesn't change the color. Like if you really only put a tiny little bit in it, maybe it would be a translucent, a little bit color. But you know, most molding pastes that I've ever worked with always lighten the color. Right, and then if you want to kind of have your brown mix over here, and then maybe touch a little bit of blue and make another little area over here that's a little bit darker. Right, so you have two different colors of brown to play with. Right, so I can come over and use my scruffy brush to pick it up and dab a little bit in spots along the edge. It's just giving it, you can definitely do this with probably paint alone, just to give it a little bit of a different look. Alright, so I'm going to grab a couple areas here and smooth it off. A little bit more brown in here. Alright, go over, pick up. You're kind of laying it down in little stripies. Alright. And I'm going to turn my canvas around. Very light. And look to get the other side. So I can play around with a little bit of coffee latte. Oops. So I'm not afraid to play and try it. What's the worst that can happen, right? Yep. So I was getting used to picking up that heavier paste, so I was really scooping it up. But now with this paint, you can definitely be a little lighter on your touch. But when it's that thick paint, you almost have to scoop it up. Right, I like just softening the edge too as it goes in. That's kind of neat. I'm just using it right on the edge, tipping it right over. And you can definitely use it as a brush too, right, if you want a little thicker look. Right, because this tree definitely has been around a long time. And it has lots of textures and nooks and crannies. Okay, and then I'm going to use some of this texture too to maybe soften some of the green areas. Right, so some of it's a little bit more brown. It's quite addictive, this texture paint. A little bit more brown. Right, it's starting to look too dark. Okay, so yeah, I'm really liking that. And you can always just stop when you're not sure, and then, you know, give it a day. And if you feel like you really want to add more, then you can always add it another day. Right, or say you don't have it in stock, and you can do most of this painting, and maybe one day you end up having some of this thicker medium to mix, and you can always come back and add it. Right, so I'm just trying to go right off the edge, and I'm making the edges look a little rough in the process too. Remember, I was trying to do that a little bit with my painting techniques, but I definitely like the really up and close front look of this tree. Is supposed to be definitely huge, right? Because look how big the bird is too. It's almost life size. Oh yeah, there we go. I'm picking up some coffee latte. Oops. Sprinkling a couple highlights of the lighter color in there. I don't want the circles of the scruffy brush. This one's really round, so you gotta really tip over. Alright, so this could be very addictive, guys, to play around with. As soon as you put the medium in your brush and then go pick up another color, you don't even have to pre-mix it. Right, and double load it with both colors, and but yeah, just this little bit of a highlight here. Oh yeah, and I swear it's this paste is giving this, like, I don't think you can get close, but you're not gonna get the same kind of feel as with this thicker medium in there. Oh wow, I love it. Alright, just a couple little areas here, brighten it up. Alright, so hopefully you can see some of these streaks in here still, and just making it just less perfect. Softening some of the brown ones that may be too dark, just with that little bit of coffee latte on them. I'm having fun off screen, sorry guys. Alright, so look at that texture. Oh, look at that. I love it, I love it, I love it. Alright, so guess what we're doing now? I'm gonna put that in water. We don't need that anymore. Gonna come over and pick up a little bit of this medium. Like I said, I was just picking it up, loading my brush, then coming over and picking up a color. And then you can even go over with my yellow. Getting excited now. Okay, so the red is, you know, you do have quite a bit. You shouldn't need to do it with the red too much, just to pick up a little bit of Pueblo. And then we're going to really concentrate, guys. We're going to try and only pick up, hit the orange areas. Just a few. And try and play with this. Right, and pick up a little bit of color, pick up a little bit of yellow. And yeah, you gotta kind of hit the wet paste here a little bit too, wherever you hit the yellow, so you can get some mishmash colors going on. Right, can't double load this traditionally. So I'm just doing a couple little areas of orange and wetting it. And then coming and getting the yellow, and I can see it in the lighting, guys. I don't know if you can, but I can kind of see where it's wet looking. So I'm trying real hard to pick up just a few areas. Hopefully I can get some thicker areas of paint too. I soften the orange if it's too much. I pick up that medium. And you don't have to do lots. Just a little bit here and there. Pick up some medium. Some yellow. Some orange. I'm doing it backwards. That's okay. You know, like you hit the yellow first and then smash on it with some orange to darken. Okay, so again, you can do this to your whole painting, or you can just do it in certain areas. And I love that it stays shiny too, because that's another thing that happens with most modeling paste when you're playing with it like this. Usually you'll see a different color of shades, right? Shininess and okay, so now I'm just trying to trickle. Right, and then down here, definitely we want to add some bigger chunks now, right? So really hit it. So maybe we can multi-load a little bit. All right. More yellow. Right. So I'm just trying to stay over here a little bit more right now. And then remember, these are bigger. Up here is very tiny little, right? It's just to add the texture. And I could have done this a little sooner too if I wanted to, but you know, I wasn't sure at the time. And I really love the colors that are going on over here too, right? So I don't want to play around with that too much right now. Oops. Picked up some blue or something. And so I got lots of textures going on everywhere. Okay, so we definitely want to create some leaves here too, so we can multi-load whatever we got left over here. Pick up a little bit of white. Oh, I need some fresh white. And some fresh, we're gonna use brown actually. Okay, so we're gonna use a little bit of the brown to darken. And the Pueblo. And a little bit of yellow, brighten. Alright, so I got some paste in there still too. Okay, so a little bit of bright yellow. And if we can try to create the illusion, I might need more white. The illusion of, I don't even remember where I did that. You know, some full leaves. Right, and if you try to put them in a darker area, some simple ones. In lots of different directions. And some are laying over on top. Right, some are skinnier, some are bigger. So just a little bit of brown in there, just enough to add a little bit of. So hopefully some of them can be a little bit more yellow on top of the green areas. So you're just putting a tiny little bit of brown Pueblo and brightening it up with yellow or a little bit of white with it. Right, you can try and make some look like a maple leaf. Right, especially on the dark. Right, you can get a nicer look. Right. Some are gonna look a little different or more dimension because some has 5, then 1 at the top. Over here, a bit more yellow. And remember, they're sandwiched and dead, and you know, so they don't have to be totally perfect. A tiny little bit of a vein in there. If you want, just to touch it with some maybe brown. I guess I can let that dry, maybe go over it again so it's a little brighter. Right, add some red into it. It's really tiny, guys. I'm just using a size 8. You can definitely use a size 6. And if you want to come through your areas anywhere there's a dark area, right, just to try to really make some of these look like a real leaf. And just a little bit of white. And do some 1 strokes in there as well. Some of them are going to be maybe darker. A bit bright. Look a little bit more leafy now. So definitely I like the one stroke leaves, but with this look I find that you're getting it to stand out and pop out a little bit more because of having them in both directions. So it's just like a little teardrops that you're creating, and definitely we need some red. Right. And pop up some of these a little bit more with some red. I got my yellow and red. Just wherever you're having a hard time getting nice definition or color. So I can add a little bit more warmth. Or a little bit more orange on top of the brown areas, more than, as I say, I'm just loosely getting that color a little brighter, and play with it a bit more there. It really looks like there's lots of leaves falling, and I need more brighter, clean yellow. Another one there. Right here you can start putting, a few one-stroke leaves if you wanted. I can be fighting with no paint on my brush. Right, you get to kind of see little bits more. Right. So yeah, just a few here and there. Yeah, you can make them closed or one-stroke leaves. Tiny bit of a stick in there. Hard to get the chisel with a thicker paint. Anyways, guys, so I hope you're having fun with this. And little sticks every once in a while helps to make them look a little bit more like leaves too, right? And definitely up here too, we can put the odd leaf up on there. And maybe because this project's already taken some time, I'll put them on at the end when everything's all nice and dry, because I don't want to touch my paste. And we'll put it on fast forward for you guys, okay? So you can just watch, and you don't have to see me playing and fussing with every little tiny leaf that I put on there. So it'll be very repetitive and just kind of putting a little bit more up there for you. Okay, so we can blow dry this just a little bit, so it is surface dry, but definitely it's going to take a good, I don't even know what they say on here anymore. I need my other glasses to see that tiny. 1 to 2 paint, 2 mediums, so 1 paint, 2 mediums, and let dry for 48 hours. Well, that's if it's really, really thick. So you see some of the thickest little areas that are really raised. If you go and touch it, you'll end up denting it. that's basically it for all the playing around that we're gonna do here. And we just gotta finish some details on our bird. So we're just gonna let this dry for a little while. Like I said, you can do your bird first, watch the recording, skip ahead, and then come back and add all this paste if you want, or not at all. Right? They're blowing around like crazy there. Everything is about to fall off, and then in 2 days it's gonna snow. Because that's usually what happens around here. Alright, so we're going to turn this guy around and get you a little closer. So you can see how I'm going to do this. Alright, so we definitely need some of that Prussian blue. And cobalt. And teal. It's been out for a while. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and grab a little tiny bit of blue and work that in. Then I'm going to grab a little bit of teal, work that in. Then I'm going to come over where the cobalt is, and I'm going to pick up just the tiniest amount of Prussian blue. Okay, so we have to fix our little tips here a little bit and enhance them a bit. I like that white on that side, so I'm not going to leave it. All right, so see what you've got going on here for how your tail looks. All right, just the smallest amount of dark blue. All right, and then follow those streaks up. And we want the teal to show. When I'm doing a project with aqua, I keep saying teal. Now I'm just going to add just the smallest amount of white into my teal. And it adds a few more streaks, right? Just a little bit at a time. Just the smallest amount of white. Hardly work it in, just like you're touching the plate once. And then I'll see how this is just going very lightly. Some movement up. Okay, the smallest amount of white, guys. So if you're working with a small brush, a tiny little, right, whatever teal I had on my plate that I was working with, maybe a little bit more. Right, and I want to push with the teal part and the white part so that I'm getting some lighter areas in there too, right? Come over and grab the Prussian and grab it from the base of his tail now, right? The smallest amount of Prussian, and you're doing little streaks but backwards now so we can add depth in here. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see that in the lighting, right? A little bit more tealy look. We want the blue to be on the tips here nice. Just a little bit of white, just to highlight. So So we're going to turn this guy around again so that you can see that we have to put a little bit more blue in his body here in spots that we adjusted. Right, keep that teal and just a little bit of white and cobalt. Right, so I want to add a little bit of brightness here in his, right, so you're just kind of adding a little bit of white so you can streak just that little bit of green in there. Because you really can't see his feathers in there. We can definitely come in and do just a few little V notches here and there, just to kind of look like the feathers are coming down his back. Right, so I didn't want it to be too white, guys, just very, very subtle. Right, and they're smaller on the outside here than they are coming in around the front. Right, so try to not make them too big. Okay. And then while you have that little bit of lighter color here too, you can come around the top of his beak here and just add that little bit of glow on the front of his head here. A little bit brighter aqua. Very light touches, guys, just tweaking, right? And then on the top here, I want to fix his beak here a little bit and make it stand out a little bit more. So I'm just penciling in just that little bit of pressure. Smallest little line, right? You guys can see. And then coming up underneath it, a little darker. Right. So hopefully you're seeing still some of that. Right. So in underneath here too is a little bit of bluey kind of white color. Right, so I want to pick up lots of white now. I'm getting whatever I had on my brush, I'm coming over and grabbing lots of white. So I still have a little tiny bit of a hint of teal in there, in the white, and just the cobalt. Right, doesn't take much. I'm not even putting any medium, just to kind of soften things a little tiny bit. Right, keep grabbing fresh white. Right, so we can kind of maybe make some feathers coming down here. Right, so once you've dirtied it a little bit, then now you can come in and highlight it with little bits of white coming up all the way around his belly. Okay, and the same thing with his cheeks. You're just going to use the chisel to kind of add some little soft feathers off the edge, like we were just kind of plucking down color before. So you can see the smallest little chisel just at the very, very end. Right, just to make it a little bit more fuzzy there. And then same thing with off the edge. So this is why I wanted it to be darker, a little bigger. So then when you come along and add these little feather ticks, you're going to be doing it on the dark. Right? And the smallest amount of blue that you might have left in your brush, okay, it's very washed out. Okay, and then there's a little highlight here. And once you have your brush loaded, it's kind of easy to kind of very lightly touch it with just that little bit of weight on the tip. So I had my other old gradient pile here I was using earlier, so I just to pick up some of that green colors, add some of that teal in there again, and then load her up with white, right? And then you're picking up white on the tip, just at the very, very edge. Okay, so right at the top here where we were trying to build a little bit of a shoulder, and you can just kind of highlight just that little bit, and they're just like tiny little ticks, tick, 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 so they're not a perfect line. Right, so I'm just coming in to his breast here a little bit, and then under here is underneath the wing, so it's nice and neat looking. But up here is kind of like where the white is, a little bit like feathers up there. Okay, so hopefully you're feeling comfortable with that, because we're going to start doing his tail now with black. Okay, so we want black loaded in our brush. Right, and then we want to work in the smallest amount of white. Don't overwork it, so that you're able to pick up the smallest amount of black with just the smallest amount of white. Okay, so you can create a line. Now we're not painting, guys, like this. We're dabbing. Okay, so there's a lot of this is all dabbed. Okay, so I'm going to fix his tail a little bit with some of my black. Right, I got lots of white still here, and just a couple highlights just to get you started down there. And then we're going to draw a couple little U shapes, very subtle. Right, I love picking it up with the corner of my brush, just ever so lightly, guys. Okay, so we got 3 little V's there happening, right, closer to the back. And then inside there, right, we can definitely start to do these little U strokes, okay? So in the front here, it's kind of like just a few more dots. Right? And then as it gets to the back, it's starting to get a little heavier, maybe a little bit more space, jagged it up and down. So you want to keep picking up fresh black. You're not seeing it, but it's going to help you spread out the white. Okay, so just little ticks in that small area. And you can always come over, pick up some fresh white, just touch them again so they're nice and bright. Right, you want to work your way this way, so then that way you're working out of it, so you don't have to go on your area here. So like I said, there's like about 4 different layers. Okay, so we're just going to bring these actually a little bit longer. Then I'm going to move up. So we're into this first blue area that I did. So remember, when we get here, we're going to be coming around in a U. So we want to start a little bit softer, like a U. Right, so come a little bit lower. And we can always add more of these ticks in. Right, so a little bit lower. And then these ones are a little bit longer lines. So I see how I left that blue there, but that's okay, because you're going to cover it now. Right, that's why you need the black. And if there's little bits of blue still in there, that's okay, because it just kind of adds to the highlight. So just drag it. The first ones are just more like touches, and then you can definitely come and drag these ones a little bit more. Wet my black, work that in really good, then come over and tip. So you're moving that paint down a little bit more. Okay, so right, oops, I'm getting red all over myself. We're adding more texture. I dipped my hand in red by accident. Okay, tiny little tips, right? So your smallest little tip of fresh paint. It's looking a little bit blurry there. Coming towards the center here a little bit more. So everything's almost on that same angle coming from the tip. Okay, there's some really longer lines coming. A little bit more in the front. And then as you're coming to the front, they're getting smaller. Okay, so see how I go over it very lightly, just to get a little brighter. Right, leave that little ball of brightness there. Okay, so right here where I left like a little YT area, there's some really long stripes in this area. And they kind of go like a V at this point. And like I said, the longer ones are up a little higher because you're going to come down. So a little bit lower, higher, lower here. And then smaller over here. Okay, so in here now there's lots of little micro dots. But what I want to concentrate on first is those ticks a little bit more. Right, so we're going to finish all of our ticky motions here. And then where you had your little V there, there's another V. My black is getting a bit thick, so it's not helping me here. So again, a little tiny bit of medium maybe, just because mine is gone old and I'm being stubborn and not getting some fresh black out. Right, so hopefully you're getting some black in there. And then again, I'm trying to create that V where it's coming towards each other. Right, and then a couple smaller ones. But these are like the longest, kind of, as they get further and further up, they're getting a bit bigger and longer. almost to the top, but not all the way. Alright, make sure you're grabbing fresh paint. Hopefully you saw that one. Okay, so then I'm going to come down and jig-jag some smaller ones here. And you can do two things, guys. You can keep tipping on the corner of your brush if you're happy with, you know, using that as your dots, right? Keep grabbing fresh paint. Some are a little bit smaller at the edge, and then you can make a few just a little bit bigger, add some interest. Or you can use your kiss dotting tool. And I like pushing myself to see what I can do. And if worst comes to worst, I take a wet brush and I go and I wipe it all down and erase it before it dries. Right. So just make sure you're grabbing fresh white, like every 2, maybe 3 little dabbies. And there's a couple coming down the front there. Okay, so if you feel like you have any areas that maybe just aren't enough, you know, you can definitely come and pull a few of these a little bit short or longer. Brighten up some of these dots over here. So that might be the trickiest area for you guys is, you know, trying to do these little tiny little strokes. You definitely wouldn't want to make them any smaller than this, guys. Honestly, it's just too hard to do that. Okay, so I wiped off my brush, cleaned it really good. And then I want to pick up just the smallest amount of white again by itself and come over and enhance this claw here a little bit. Right. I think it was pretty good actually the way it was. Don't want it to be too big. So he looks like he has nails. Just a little bit of movement in there, touches here and there. And then brighten up in front of it a little bit. You can always come up and touch up anything. And that's about it, guys. That's, you know, lots of little details in there. And you're picking up just a little bit of Prussian blue by itself. Right, just to define where those different tail feathers are. Right. Use a little bit of Prussian wherever you feel like you need to add a few more shades. Right, so I said I went sideways and then I pulled it down, just streaky kind of motion. Right, and then in lower, while you're upside down, it's a good time to do this part. Right, we're just adding just that little bit of medium. Oops, touching my white now because I'm holding my plate in the air. That's why I only like putting like the smallest drop of medium out. Okay. Just the smallest little line here. Right, just to kind of add some shading in between. Here. Right, and bring some of this up. Too wet. I'm so sure. I do it to myself too. I kind of rinse my brush and then don't dab it enough. Right, that always gets us in trouble. And then right now I'm just kind of lining around that area here, but now I want to streak it back up. So it's really good to have a lot of this moisture here that I have, with either wet it down with medium, so that when you go to put your color down, you can grab the edge of it and swoop it up into the wet medium. Okay. And find my blue. Oh, there it is. I really am getting more and more blind. Okay, again, into your background trees. Right, if you didn't put enough shading in there. Right along this line here. Check that, make sure it's doing good. Right, even adding little bits of, you know, depth in places, right, wherever you feel like you need a little bit of, right, under some of your leaves. You know, if it's not, you don't always want to highlight your leaves, but you can definitely shade behind it, right, to help pop that out. This is where I have the most fun, guys. I really do. I just love all the extra little bits of shading and tweaking. I can always come in with a little bit of floating medium and cobalt. And if you feel like any of your areas were not washed enough, try to pick one side of, like, maybe just a little bit of blue here and there. If you feel like, you know, we're playing around too much. Right, you're just going to play around and add maybe a little bit more blue into some of these. You know, if you feel like these ones are a little bit gray toned. Right, that's one thing that you can always add a little bit more in. But stick with just the cobalt, you know, just enough to say. Right, just here and there. I do like the little bits of splashes of white in there too. Okay, and then what I would do too to clean up my tree line on the back side of things, right? You can definitely add some more leaves, but before you do that, you know, you could always take a little bit of red and floating medium and then just use the red to do a little bit of shading back here. Right, anywhere you want to clean up or intensify around the bird. If you don't pick up your plate, you're fine to just leave your medium there. Okay, so again, just enough to kind of clean things up, maybe add a little bit of warmth in places. You can do like a wash over areas that you feel like might be too light. All right, so I'm moving it back so I don't have a lot, it's not like a line of it. So this is the kind of stuff you have to wait until it's dry. And if you use too much brown, it makes it look too dark. Right, this way you can kind of wash right over your yellow, dull down on it a little bit. You see how that just makes everything look a little bit richer back here. Not on your blue areas. If you have any blue areas on the edge here, skip over them. And definitely want to add just a little highlight of white. There's another little highlight of white hidden here. A little bit more. And just some movement of ticks of highlights. Now that it's dry, it's maybe a little easier for you to do. All right. And then this red is still not as bright as it should be. We can definitely use a little bit of neon pink. Okay, so I'm going to use the smallest amount of red and pick up some neon pink. We don't want it pink, but we want a very bright red. So I want to just add just a little another coat. Play with it and you'll see. All right, you don't want it to be pink. If you have neon red, maybe you can use that too. Right, and just kind of brighten up this red to another level because we've got so much orangey red here. And now I want to just add just that little bit more of a cool pink color to our woodpecker so it really stands out. Okay, so you can multi-load a little bit of pinky red and a little bit of white. If you're not getting a good, nice soft line here, you can do a little bit of a merge here. All right, so I like using my two colors on my brush and merging them into each other. And a lot of times I just use one corner of my brush just to kind of add more paint. All right, we need more pink. Tap, tap, tap. Just a little bit, because it's very translucent color, right? So you need to kind of do it with on top as a highlight kind of color. It won't give you good coverage on its own. Okay, leaving it a little bit thick there. Yeah, I think that's good. A little bit too blue there. I'm just being fussy now. A little bit is good, but it was just a big spot. Okay, so definitely anywhere that around his head, like you want to add a little bit of water into this black, just a little bit because you don't want it to be too inky. Just a little bit easier to get the smallest, finest line with your liner brush, right? So test it, play with it, see how fine you can go, but not to the point where it's translucent, right? So this is where, like around his eyes, if you haven't done, a little bit more lining, right? Just that little bit of black, but I like the black that I had, and then putting that little bit of teal in there. Okay, and then their eyes are quite dark, so on this white, you want to add another little black dot again. So that will be easier for you guys to do than trying to pencil around a tiniest little highlight around his eye, right? So I always find to put the white in first and then add another little, and then if you want to try and get another little tiny highlight in there, you know, just to layer just that another smallest one. Wait till it's dry, and then again, another trick that I like is to erase some of the white. If I feel like it's too white, you can put it down and then take a dry brush and just dab out some of that white that's too much. Alright, so yeah, I'm definitely liking this here a little bit more. Right, I'm just adding a little bit more shadow here along this line with my liner brush, whatever black I had. And yeah, and then Prussian as well if you want a little softer there. Right, it's just a little darker black along the line here. And then you can even put the smallest amount of black while we have it here too, just along the line at the top of his head to give it maybe a little bit more separation. Just touching it here and there just to kind of add like black dots. Right, same with here, it's just kind of not standing out as much. I want to add just that little bit of depth. Right, contrast against that dark tree. That's why they like hanging out in the trees, because, you know. Right, so I'm just using my liner brush under here and smudging it. Okay, so again, anywhere you feel like you need a pop. I just love playing around with shading. I did it with the brush earlier, but again, if you want to add just a little bit more with the side of your brush. If not dark enough, I'm adding just the smallest amount of black. Use your fingers to bring it down. There should be some shadow under there with his body. And after this is dry, like, you know, you can definitely go in and add, you know, little bits of highlights of Pueblo or something like that if you feel like you want a little bit more warmth, or greens, or, you know, a little bit more mossy green. Just with a little bit of medium on my brush, and oops, picked up a big chunk of blue there. Alright, so maybe the blue was meant to be in there. I kind of like that tone in there, so we're going to leave it. It merged with the Pueblo very nicely. Alright guys, so yeah, it's just having fun with it. Okay, a little bit, just to make this tree really rustic and old. Alright guys, I hope you like it. Just plopping a little bit of movement of Prussian in here too. Just a wash of a little bit of shadow. Just a little bit of pressure around in there. A little bit of red impression. It darkens things and still gives it a nice glow. Right. Not purpley, it's kind of red. A little bit more impression and red mix, I like that. It almost like a berry wine. Okay, so if you don't have Prussian, then you can always use a bit of berry wine in here as well. Right, you can definitely try to make another maple leaf, right? So that's just with your 3. Come around the side, add a little bit of a width one. So this, any leaves that you do on here, definitely you're gonna feel like you need to go over and do another coat. Yeah, on the texture part here. A little bit more Pueblo. Don't like that one. So that's why I like the ones that are full. Tip a little bit more bright yellow. And you can even put in just the smallest amount of white the first time and then go over it again with brighter yellow. So just playing with getting the brightness going. All right, guys, hope you have fun with it. And see, I'm just grounding this area here a little bit more too. All right on top of my strokes. Hopefully they're good and dry because we want them to be just a little bit darker under the tree. Anywhere you feel like you're not this is not really on that side, this side. Right, this will help to shade it a bit. Okay guys, it's finally time to come over and grab a little bit of a liner brush and put your initials in there. You can date it if you like, but I usually put more details on the back of my painting. So I just kind of do a very simple, your initials. You know, don't like it that dark, don't like it that light. I'm going over it again. So see how I'm getting like a real streaky look in my signature. It's just playing around with adding that dark color in there and then adding your white a little bit. Okay. And add a little bit more shading into his hand. Into his hands. Because they use their hands. And just the illusion of it. Alright, maybe it's a little bit more browny there. Alright, so you can always just pop things up by itself. Alrighty, I think it's officially done. Alrighty. Looking from far away, seeing what it doesn't need anything. Just the smallest amount of red and Prussian again. I'll try this here to see if this helps. Just a little tiny bit to... You're not lining it per se. But yeah, that kind of helps to bring that red out a little bit more. All right. Now I have more red and just the smallest amount of blue, or no, Prussian. And not too much of the red, probably more the Pueblo. Okay, guys. And this is what you need to do. You need to kind of just step back and then see, is there anything else I can do to make him stand out more? Okay, so what do you think of my little woodpecker? Making it a little bit more. These guys got really strong beaks, guys. Not dainty little ones. They're very, very strong. They poke right into that wood really good. Right, find those bugs in there. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me for this project. I cannot wait to see your versions. Please message me on Facebook. If you have any questions, send me where you are in your practice. Do a little version of this on paper. Let me see it. And then when you're happy with it, you can definitely pop it onto your canvas and have your nice fall. All right, he's gathering, getting all his stuff ready for winter. All right, he's got to get as much food as possible.